Hello. Sorry, I scared everyone. I saw like 25 heads jump up. It's 2:20, so I think we'll get started. My name is Raquel Romano, and I am giving this presentation with my colleague Ada. However, unfortunately, Ada became a little bit sick earlier this week and wasn't able to make it. But the entire content of this talk is essentially her work. We were planning to present together. So we have reworked the talk, and I was just now taking a picture of all of you so she could see that we have a good audience. So we're both on the Google Accessibility Engineering team, and we will be telling you about Dasher, software for alternative and augmentative communication and text entry. So Ada will introduce herself. She was going to give a live demo of the tool to introduce herself. So she'll still do that. She recorded this. She's going to show you a quick live demo with one sentence, so you'll see the actual speed with which she uses the tool, and then the rest of it is pre-composed text that will be that she'll just go ahead and play. So right now she's typing.
Hi, my name is Ada.
Ada.
I would like to talk about Dasher, a tool which allows me to communicate with the world. What is Dasher? Who is using it? And my unique situation allowing me to make it even better suited for alternative communication. I've worked as software engineer at Google for almost 6 years. Over 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with ALS. Yes, the dreaded sickness from Ice Bucket Challenge. It is slowly but surely killing my neurons responsible for movement. As of right now, I can't move my arms, I can't walk, I have trouble breathing, and worst of all, I can't speak. But enough of the gloom. For some time I tried to figure out what should I do with my suddenly changed and shortened life. Then I realized that I could be doing something very relevant and useful. And I was getting lots of ideas on how to improve access to technology for motor impaired people. So I joined Accessibility team. I guess there is no better motivation than the threat of not being able to effectively communicate both online and face-to-face. I tried countless number of alternative text entry and speech generation methods. So far Dasher is the fastest and least tiring. This is my normal speed of typing using Dasher. Yes. Much slower than speech, but good enough for meaningful conversation.
Okay, and as I said, my name is Raquel. I've been a software engineer at Google for a long time, but I only recently joined this team. And the way we got connected was last year I was working with Google.org on an initiative to give nonprofits grants for working on technology for making the world accessible. And I also was helping run an internal, what we call an accessibility innovation sprint. So it was a few weeks that we set aside and rounded up a bunch of Google engineers and user experience designers and technical Googlers to just work for a couple weeks on some kind of feature or product that they felt would improve accessibility. And I had 10 different teams and had a bunch of C++ engineers who said, we really want to contribute, but most of these projects are Android or web app development, and that's not our thing. So I was like, C++. Oh, Dasher, because I've been talking with Ada a lot. She's been helping me understand this whole space. And I said, do you want a bunch of engineers? And she said, sure. So she's been now the lead software developer for a group of what we call 20%ers. So they continue to work on it afterward in their spare time. And so this talk will tell you a little bit about I want to start out first just giving you a little bit of a history of Dasher. We're going to slow it down a lot to show you how you use it, although actually if you're using it, you can make it go as slow as you want, which is really interesting. And give you some context in case you don't know about the alternatives to it. And then we'll go into Dasher 5, which is sort of what this talk was, the reason for this talk, to announce this whole new set of features and improvements that have been done since in the last, I would say, 6 months, maybe a bit longer, and share with you what Ada and her team have done. Has anyone here actually used Dasher before? Okay, cool. So a little bit of history. It was invented about 15 years ago, more or less, by a faculty member at the University of Cambridge in information theory. And he was working on models like language models, on sort of the probabilistic models of how frequently, how common is this particular word in a particular language. And he realized that the encoding of this model would be really appropriate for a totally different way of entering text. Using it like an input device and a screen. And if you want to hear, I recommend his talk if you get interested in this. He has like an hour-long tech talk he gave at Google about 10 years ago describing it. But I like, he says some of the 3 rules for how to use Dasher are don't click, don't drag, don't speed. And the speed analogy is very interesting because people sometimes look at it if they are not using it and think that looks crazy and confusing and I might get nauseous. But actually it's sort of like driving. Who here has motion sickness if you're in a passenger seat? I definitely have since I was young. And it's like that. If you're watching someone else do it, it's kind of not something you want to watch. But if you're using it, it's really not like that, and you can easily slow it down. So we'll go into that. So this is a screencast that Ada put together. The beginning part, she's just going to write one word at the pace that she would normally write it at, and then she's going to slow it way down and show you exactly how she's using it. She made the screencast, she wrote the script. She just asked me to do the audio for it, so you'll hear my voice, but she did this. How to speak using Dasher. If Dasher is not already running, start the Dasher for Conversations shortcut. Type the text you want to say by zooming into the boxes containing letters. Once you have written what you want to say, zoom into the gray command box at the end of the alphabet, and then into the Speak All box.
Congratulations.
Let's review it again with a more detailed explanation. Click with the mouse or press space to start zooming. The boxes containing letters are in alphabetical order. More likely letters are displayed in bigger boxes. I have zoomed into the letter C box, and then, inside the C box, I have zoomed into the letter O box. After writing congrat, the remainder of the word congratulations is extremely likely, so Dasher groups together that entire sequence of letters into a clump. Zooming into that clump of letters is very fast because there was no need to hunt for each subsequent letter. There is a special gray box with commands at the end of each alphabet list. Inside the gray command box, there are boxes for moving text around, deleting pieces of text, clearing text, and speaking text. Let's zoom into the Speak box. Inside the Speak box, I zoom into the All box and Dasher will speak the whole text.
Congratulations.
Okay.
How to speak using Dasher.
Yes, good question. Let me tell you, she was going to add that to her intro, but let me add that how she's. Let me tell you a bit about how she's using it. So she's used a number of different input methods, and she's very flexible and versatile and changes things. So let me get to that. Sometimes when you exit the video, you go back to this. So let me get to that in a bit. I'll talk about input devices. So as you can imagine, efficiency is pretty important, and makes you more productive. It makes your conversation more fluid, and it's interesting to think about what makes a piece of software or an interface efficient. Predictive text is obviously, one thing. So that we're all used to if we use SMS apps that complete our do word completion for us. Which is something that Dasher, you can see, does. Access to sort of recently or commonly used phrases, also useful. And essentially a number of, like a grab bag of other types of features can really improve efficiency, and that's what most of the improvements that Otto and her team have done are about. So before we go into those, I want to just put this in the context of different types of input devices and other alternatives. I would say that no one tool is good, and no one set of tools is good. It's like one size fits all. It really depends. And there are a number of other alternatives. Most of these, we were in contact with some of the makers of these. They follow the more typical paradigm of some form of on-screen layout of what you're used to in a physical keyboard. So, and all of these, including Dasher, can be controlled by a number of input devices. So, Ada uses a head mouse with a reflective dot. That she finds that for conversation to be the easiest thing. She's used a foot mouse before. She's experimented with the eye trackers. And we'll do a quick demo of using a Dasher with a switch, accessibility switch, although that's not how she uses it. It's just that it's possible in various ways. So on the top, you see click to speak. This is an on-screen keyboard built by Gal Sant. He is a software developer from Israel who also has ALS and built this for himself. And it's now out there. They're selling it. They're not selling it. They're giving it away for free. Google.org has actually given them some grant money to continue to work on this. And it uses the SwiftKey API, so many SMS apps, the predictor words use an API to do that prediction, and they have a free license to use that, so it does completion for you. OptiKey is a very recently, I think, released open source piece of software by a one-man show. We talked to him recently. He does it in his spare time, is looking for a way to make a living, and it's apparently quite good as well. And on the far right, there's a suite of software, Comfort software, that has a keyboard. You can configure it in many different ways. What you're looking at is Comfort keys configured by Ada for coding. So since she's a developer, when you write software, it's very different from speaking, and you need a lot of special characters, so she's set this up to be most efficient for her to be able to develop software. So does that answer your question? So she's using a head mouse with a reflective dot on her forehead, and that to her has been most helpful. And we'll talk a little bit about eye tracker. She's also experimented with those. She has used one, but she isn't currently using that with any of these. So the benefits of Dasher, it is highly tolerant to very imprecise or unsteady, jerky motions, which is, I would say, probably very atypical of most of the types of software that you see that are controlled by a head mouse or eye tracker. And why is that? It's because you can, well, first of all, the letter sizes grow as you are more likely to select them. And you have a lot of control over timing. So if you recall, in that grid, there's a center point. If you ever move your input device right to the center, everything just stops. So if at any point you're like, this is going way too fast, you just come back there and wait, and you can pause and then go very slowly, and as you go more to the right, things will speed up. Also, very, very easy error correction. And so if you have typed some letters that you don't want, you simply go to the left of the screen, and it'll start deleting everything. Slowly, fast if you want to go very far. So there's no, you don't, I guess this is, okay, so let me not skip ahead, but also you don't have to memorize any layout. It's always alphabetical order. Most people learn that very early in life. And there's no context switching, and so by that we mean you don't, you're not in sometimes like picking out keys, then sometimes picking out predicted words, or sometimes going to delete. It's all part of the same motion. All of those things are all part of the same flow. it's a little bit like playing a video game or driving a car. It's a little bit addictive, people say. It's kind of fun. I've tried it. I have a demo here if anyone wants to try it just with my, my trackpad. It's kind of fun, actually. I can't say that I would think it would be fun to do all day because I haven't done it all day, but from what I've heard from Ada and a lot of others that she's discussed, once they get used to it, they really do use it all day to talk to people or to write emails, etc. And apparently you can become quite proficient in, not in 5 minutes, but in 15 or certainly in an hour, which is not a long time. Okay, so this is the demo I'm most nervous about because I have never used Dasher with an input switch, with an accessibility switch, but we thought it was really important to at least show that it's possible. There are a number of different ways you could, and this is the one that I wanted us to demo, which is it's not time dependent. So you don't really need to have careful control over the timing. And I'm going to play it. We didn't have time to upload the audio and make a beautiful little screencast the way you just saw. So I'm going to just walk through it myself and explain what's happening. If you have detailed questions about how it's happening, what's going on, you have to talk to her because at some point I'll reach the boundaries of my knowledge. So, so here she's set it up with 2 switches. And it looks a little bit like what you've seen before, except let's get it started, and I'll pause if I need to. Okay, so a little bit like you've seen before, but actually nothing is going to move until you hit a switch. And as you see, there's 2 areas, a top and a bottom area. So one switch is going to hit select the top area, and the other switch is going to select the bottom area. So I believe she's going to write congratulations again, just to keep it simple. And so if you look over here, you'll see, I guess I'm afraid to enlarge this or my presentation will get confused. But the word congratulation, it's really just like alphabetizing words that you had to do in 2nd grade. So if you see the capital C, little a-n, the word can, it's very common, so it's kind of big. And then you see the capital D, the word do, it's also very common. So the word congratulations is essentially going to be in between there. And we're going to, instead of zooming continuously into there, we're going to keep selecting either the top or the bottom and always be trying to head over to what's right in between those. So right now, there's nothing in the top, so she's going to hit the 2nd switch to select the bottom, and you'll see a red flash. So she's selected the bottom, and now what was in the bottom is now filling the entire screen. So now we can see, it's flipped up to the top again, so where it says can, she's going to, and you can see the C, large C, capital C, small O, that's where she's headed. So she'll hit the top, and now I'm going to just play it, and you'll see a red flash each time she chooses, she's going to choose either the top or the bottom. So as I play this, you might notice that sometimes it looks like the wrong key is pressed, like right there, and that is confusing. The fact is that as she's selecting top or bottom, sometimes you have to drive through a different letter that you don't want, but essentially, I need to pause this for a second, until it passes that middle line, it's not written. So you don't really have to worry you don't really look at what's in the editor. You essentially just look at what, kind of keep driving. You can glance at it, but until it crosses that line, it's not going to get written. Now here at the end, if you just saw, all of those letters were clumped, so she got to hit the bottom switch a number of times, which got really easy. So I'll finish that off. This is 16 characters that she's written. So she's not backspacing. She's just driving forward. 16 characters, took 24 key presses. So it's about 1.5 presses per character.
Congratulations.
Oops, I didn't connect that. So it's pretty good if you think about if you did just row column scanning on a typical layout, it would take far more than 24 key presses. Okay, now before we get to the Dasher 5 improvements, one last video we wanted to show you. This is only a 2-minute video. Steve Sailing is someone that Ada has connected with online. He uses this for communication all day, and he just has a nice little, he recently made this, and we thought we'd share it with all of you, sort of a testimonial to what it means to him and how it's changed how he communicates.
My name is Steve Sailing. Since I was diagnosed with ALS 10 years ago, technology has played a central role in maintaining my high quality of life. The most profoundly frustrating aspect of my progressively deteriorating body is not my near total paralysis, but the loss of my voice. Back in 2007, My speech was fading fast, and I was very discouraged with the on-screen keyboards that my speech therapists were showing me. They were slow, tedious, and tiring. That is when one of my therapists first introduced me to this crazy keyboard alternative with flying letters from England. I looked at Dasher right away. Dasher has become an integral part of my life, replacing the voice that I lost. Because there is no clicking, I can use it all day without getting tired. It is kind of like a video game, and is fun instead of tedious. Everyone thinks watching me type is super cool, so Dasher even improves my relationships by making me a little more interesting. When I am out with my son and his third grade class or Cub Scouts, all of his friends gather around and are mesmerized at watching me talk with Dasher. I love that Dasher makes me cool with my son's friends instead of scary. Dasher suits me well, and I was determined to contact the inventor of Dasher to express my enormous gratitude. I met David McKay online last summer to thank him profusely and asked him if Dasher was still in development. That is when he introduced me to Ada Machakre, who has refined Dasher even more with the new Dasher 5. David, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for inventing Dasher. It has become my prosthetic stream of consciousness. I dream about Dasher. It truly is a dream come true.
Okay, so as I said, this was the new improvements that I want to share with you were all done by Ada and her small team of engineers. And kind of bucketing what the improvements are, some of them are around settings and profiles, some are specifically around conversation, some around about how to compose and edit text, and then just a grab bag of other improvements that essentially she wanted, and that's why she added these. So settings and profiles, we all have different ways of talking to of communicating, right? We talk, we write emails, we edit stuff, we might give prepared speeches like this one. And if you're going to do all of those with a tool, you're going to want to configure it to be better at one versus the other because they're quite different modes. But configuring software is a real pain. It's not something you want to do regularly. It's terrible, and you just want to do it as infrequently as possible. So Ada realized that there were kind of these 4 buckets, and now decided that it should be shipped with 4 sort of pre-configured profiles that are close to optimal for conversation, for direct entry, which direct entry means you're using it to enter text into another application, like a document that you're editing or a browser. It's a different mode. For editing text, so say you're just cutting and pasting and like refining something, not just writing it from scratch, or for giving speeches. And these can be further configured, of course, but they're kind of a lot of things set up to make that easy. She also made it possible to quickly launch Dasher for a specific language. So you could choose a particular mode of communication in a particular language, choose that pair, and launch it that way. So we're going to give a quick demo of when you might want to do this and why it matters enough to talk about. So I'll play this. This is a demo. So I want to point out here before I start it that those 4 little boxes in the black strip in the middle vertically, those are the 4 shortcuts that she created that I'm showing also on the right. So here, I'll narrate a bit what's going on in this video. So imagine Ada's sitting here writing up the release notes for the GitHub page that's describing some of the fixes that were made for Dasher 5. So she's writing that in English in a Google shared Word document. And then her mother walks into the room. Her mother speaks only Polish, and she remembers that she needs to tell her mother something. So she just hops over to that shortcut, fires it up. It's in Polish. It's going to... I won't say it in Polish because I don't speak Polish, but she will.
Mamuś, za pół godziny wychodzimy.
So she said, oh, Mom, we're going to leave in half an hour. then she goes back to work. And she didn't have to stop what she was doing, close it out, start it up again, and which is previously what you had to do. So, so now moving on to another set of fixes around. Oh, question, yes.
Yeah. So she's using the tracker right now.
Yeah, for this.
And so, how was she accessing the menu bar? Was it a tracker as well?
I believe she's using the same input device for both interacting with her UI for her on her screen and Dasher.
Is there an external program that's interpreting the head tracker, or is that something that Dasher's doing?
Dasher's not doing that, and I believe that that's supported. She's using a Windows Surface tablet, and so I believe that's
Got it.
yeah. I'm not. That's definitely outside the bounds of my knowledge, but I'm fairly certain of that. So during conversation, what are some of the needs? It's time consuming, as you've seen, to type out the longer phrases. So conversations shift quickly. So we might be having a really animated conversation, so if someone's having a conversation, you have a brilliant thought, you start typing it out, and then by the time you're done, the conversation has moved on. And you don't want to lose your brilliant thought, but you do want to participate in the current conversation and not lose the text that you had. So previously that was really hard to do with Dasher. And the improvements that Automate have made it possible. So why was it hard? What you see on the right here is, if you remember when she was ready to speak something, she would zoom into this yellow speak area. And all the options here, they weren't there before. The ones that were there before were just line. So if you were to zoom in there, you could speak one line of text, which is probably not that useful if you think about it. No, lines usually don't necessarily obey like sentence boundaries. Then there was speak new, which is second to the last. That will speak anything that you have typed since the last time you hit speak. And then speak all, which is speak everything in your entire box. So in that conversation example, if you had that thought, then you went in and wanted to say something else, you would either have to say that previous thought at the wrong point in that conversation, or just throw it away, backspace, start a new conversation, and then rewrite it later. You really don't want to lose anything you typed. It's taken a while. So she added a bunch of support for just lots of granularities of text. You can select the current word, the current sentence, starting from wherever your cursor is, or the current paragraph, and just read that fragment of text. So in that case, she would just abandon that at the top, type something new, speak it, then go back and speak the other phrase that she wanted to. Another big problem was there was no way to easily cancel, and so sometimes you might speak by mistake, not realizing that you had typed a bunch of text you didn't want to say out loud, and suddenly it starts spewing, Polish in the workplace around a lot of non-Polish speakers, and she said, she used to say it was funny for a second, and then it got really annoying, and then they had to find the volume, etc., and so she added to cancel. The other important thing, which you just actually saw demoed, was being able to speak in the correct pronunciation for a language. So multiple languages were always supported, but apparently they weren't. You weren't able to actually speak in the correct pronunciation. So now she's set it up so it supports the language packs, say on Windows or on Linux. They can be as long as you download that language pack, it should work. Couple of other things. When you're, say, composing and editing text, you want to copy and paste and move things around. The same example I showed you before, being able to choose various granularities, that wasn't supported, so she'd also enabled that. So if you're editing that document and decide that you could just choose a piece of text and move it around. There's also a big trade-off if you think about it. You've seen different ways that she has laid out how she's using Dasher with other applications. And there's a bit of a trade-off between the Zoom interface with the boxes and we'll call it the editor box that shows the words that you've input. If you're writing a lot of text, you might want that input area to be large, because if you're writing a lot of text and you can only see a strip, it's really hard to know what you're about to speak. On the other hand, the larger it is, maybe the smaller your Zoom UI is, and maybe that Zoom UI you want it to be large just to make it easy to control. So it's a bit of a trade-off, and the optimal layout really depends on what you're doing. So she's added a bunch of support for different layouts that are easy to start up and you can ask Dasher to remember them so that the next time you start it up, if your favorite layout is, I want the text on top and I want Dasher on bottom, you can do that, or side to side. yeah, and so I just want to add a couple of others that come up that aren't really in any particular category. When you're doing what she calls direct entry, so you're directly entering the text that you've written in Dasher into another application, that's where you're saving it. But Dasher doesn't necessarily know that, and so Dasher, typically when you're using it, if you're about to close it, it'll say, do you want me to store unsaved changes? And you would want that if you're using it and that's your main editor. But if it's not, it's really annoying. So they made it possible to suppress that dialog box, which is to always pop up every time she stored stuff in another document. Also now able to save documents directly in a safe format for foreign letters, accents and other scripts that before it would kind of mangle them a bit. She added another color scheme for people who prefer dark. And there's a grab bag of other goodies in there. I'll show a link at the end that you can go and browse. So I want to end with just there's a ton of work that's left to be done, and there are a ton of engineers out in the world, not just on different platforms, and so we really want to share with you some of the things that can be worked on next. So Dasher actually is supported on Mac, Android, and apparently iPhone. I haven't tried it on any except Linux and Mac. I have it on Mac here. But the latest features haven't yet been added to those platforms. We're working with just the experience we had among the small team, and so there would be great to upgrade all the other platforms with the same features and to continue to maintain all the platforms with any new developments. Some of the feature requests that have come through that, because as this gets disseminated and shared, is just to be able to configure the toolbar on top, just to have like your most frequently used commands. So if you're in conversation mode, obviously you're going to want to speak it at some point, just have a big speak button there. But if you're not in conversation mode, just use that real estate for something else. We don't need a speak or a speak button. Same for cancel. It might be that you want to explicitly save phrases that you use often. And if you think about Dasher and what I said about how it's using the language model, it's already doing that. So if you always say a certain phrase, it's going to become more common and it'll be clumped together and it'll be larger. And it's because every time you use it, if you do save the text, it's going to include that into its model. It's adapting. But maybe there's a certain baked phrase that you want to say all the time. So say for Ada, she says sometimes she just wants to be able to say her name and and what she's using so that people who have never spoken to her understand, that this is how she's going to communicate. So it would be nice to have that available. Another great idea would be to support being able to display different parts of Dasher on two screens. So right now, sometimes if she's typing something out and it's like a kind of open environment with lots of other people, sometimes it's easier just to read what she's writing instead of waiting for her to speak it, and instead of her speaking out loud, because it's hard to whisper with text-to-speech. So instead, if she had so that means you have to stand behind her to talk to her, which is super awkward, and you feel like you're, spying on her, the rest of her screen. So it would be nice if there was she could be typing on one screen, and that would be an outward-facing computer showing what she was saying. And last, to the questions about input devices, apparently, while it does support, eye trackers and some of the very, including the low-cost ones that are starting to come out that are in the $100 range, a lot of these eye trackers try to smooth the output of the coordinates of the gaze, because if it's just raw coordinates and you're using like a keyboard that requires you to dwell on a particular key, it'll be super jittery, and so you really want it smooth so it can stabilize it. But Dasher's not like that. Dasher wants the raw. I guess it becomes a little bit laggy if it's over smooth. So, however, that's been kind of optimized for some of those dwell interfaces. It's not ideal for Dasher. So it would be nice if there were a different mode that you could get the signal from the tracker to Dasher in a way that kind of is optimal for using that UI. So that's it. There are a few links I want to share. So the videos that we're making, there's still a few more to come. They're just on a YouTube channel, and you can look at the few that are there now. There's about 4 at bit.ly/dasher-videos. And then if you want to just get the code, get information about the release, those are both, everything is on GitHub at this point. There's a bit of a branch from the original, from David McKay's original code, which is actually sitting on a server in the University of Cambridge. And so they're communicating to try to merge all these, so one points to the other and vice versa. But right now, this is where the latest stuff is sitting. So the GitHub wiki page is bit.ly/dasher-wiki, and you can poke around there and find the releases as well. And Ada is more than happy to to listen to people either with technical or non-technical questions. Her email address, which she generously offered, is also on that page, that wiki page, amajorek@google.com. Thank you. So, yes. Oh, it's free. It's open source and free.
What eye trackers are you support in the future update?
You'd have to ask, I should say, all these questions will probably be answered with, you should probably ask Ada that. But I can say that I know she's tried sort of this is like a $100 Toby eye tracker right now, and we were talking to the CEO of iTribe with his cheap one. I think all of those really should be supported. And I think they are nominally, it's just, I haven't seen her use those paired together, and I think that it's not quite there yet. Actually, we're talking to some of them about what they need in order to get it to work better, not just on multiple platforms. So essentially, I'd say the cheap ones, so that you could have free software and a cheap eye tracker, and you're ready to go. That's kind of the ideal.
Future of Dasher
Yeah, really good question. Like, what is the future of Dasher? And I think this is a good question generally around open source software in this space. We had some interesting threads with David McKay. You know, it was built at 15 years ago, right? And it's sort of been latent for quite a while. And this is a problem often with open source projects that don't develop strong communities of developers. They can just sit there, but this doesn't mean they're not useful. So we were discussing, you know, what's the ideal? Like, you know, Ada, a lot of people at Google do work on open source code, and so she decided to work on this, and so she's taking it forward. But you know, any one developer can only take something so far. So that's not really decided yet. I think for me, since it is open source, whether Google's involved or not, you have to kind of develop a community of people that continue to work on it. So I'm kind of interested in. You know, it was really easy to get a handful of engineers at Google to play around with it, but we haven't tried since then to kind of get the word out elsewhere or even more at Google. So that's something that I think we'll be willing to do, but it's really unknown yet as to like where it will go. You know, we certainly don't want it to be like a Google-owned thing at all, but be happy to have Google software developers contribute to it. Okay, well, thank you very much.